The pen trembled against the thermal receipt paper, each stroke of blue ink louder than the low murmur of conversation filling the Bellecourt Club. Yet Dana felt every scratch like a gunshot as she stared at the date printed at the top of the bill, February 7th. 3 years of starched vests and silent footsteps had masked a hypervigilance that never slept, a survival trait honed on the South Side long before she ever donned a nursing uniform. 3 years of double shifts, Bellecourt nights, Northwestern Hospital cafeteria mornings, nursing classes wedged into the exhausted, gray hours between. The man they called the Wolf sat in his corner booth, back to the mahogany paneling, eyes tracking every entrance. Enzo Baresi's presence bent the atmosphere itself, making even the crystal chandeliers seem to dim in deference. The staff had choreographed their movements around his Thursday visits, linens pressed twice, his preferred Macallan 25, kept at precisely 65 degrees. Other patrons instinctively lowered their voices when he entered. Children stopped fidgeting, sensing the predator lurking beneath the impeccable tailoring. Dana had earned the privilege of serving his table through flawless invisibility, memorizing his preferences with the precision she applied to anatomy studies: whiskey neat, water without ice, espresso with a single sugar cube placed on the saucer. His tattooed hands could sign acquisition papers or death warrants with equal grace. Tonight shattered the pattern when 7 men entered. Not together, but synchronized with a rhythm Dana recognized from the streets. Men whose expensive suits couldn't quite hide the rigid bulges at their waistbands or the stiffness of Kevlar vests beneath silk shirts. She cataloged their positions as she delivered rolls to table 4, 2 flanking the entrance, 3 at the bar with clear sightlines to Enzo's booth, 2 near the kitchen exit. It was execution geometry. The lead man, positioned at the bar's center, kept his right hand drifting toward his hip. His bourbon sat untouched, forgotten. Sweat gathered between Dana's shoulder blades despite the aggressive air conditioning. For the first time in 3 years, she allowed her hand to tremble as she extended the leather billfold toward Enzo. Her pen moved across the paper in a blur. She didn't write a paragraph. There wasn't time. Instead, she circled the number 7 in the date with thick, frantic loops and scrawled a single word beneath it: trap. Their fingers brushed as he accepted the bill. First contact in 3 years. His dark eyes found hers, a question flickering before something colder settled in his iris. He looked down, saw the circled number and the warning. He placed his whiskey glass over the ink, tapping the rim once in acknowledgement. The lead man shifted. Time stretched as Enzo stood, moving toward the private dining rooms. 3 seconds of silence passed before the bar stool crashed over. Wood against marble shattered the club's elegance. 6 men moved simultaneously. Glass exploded in the private rooms, followed by sounds like champagne corks popping. Then a heavy impact Dana felt through the floorboards. Her manager appeared, announcing immediate closure. Dana collected her tips with shaking hands, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The walk home felt endless, every shadow a threat. She triple-locked her door, checked on her brother Isaiah, sleeping peacefully, then collapsed, fully dressed, the blue ink on her fingers feeling like a stain that would never wash off. Morning brought carefully sanitized news coverage brief. Vague reports of a disturbance at an exclusive Gold Coast club. There were no reports of injuries, no mention of the shattered glass or the heavy, wet sounds of bodies hitting the floor that Dana had heard through the kitchen walls. Dana heard the report on the radio during her hospital cafeteria shift, serving breakfast with trembling hands while the news anchor sanitized the violence she'd witnessed into a mere footnote. It was the version of truth that money and influence could buy. The reality of the blood and the gunfire was buried beneath more palatable scandals about city budget cuts and sports scores. The Bellecourt remained closed. A simple sign reading, "Closed for emergency renovations," was taped to the brass-handled doors when Dana passed on her way to Northwestern after her shift ended. The brass handles were polished, but she imagined she could still smell the cordite. Her nursing professor's lecture on trauma response protocols felt surreally ironic. She was in her junior year at Northwestern, 2 years down and 2 to go in the BSN program, theoretically halfway to becoming an RN. The textbook scenarios of mass casualty triage had become visceral memory overnight. As she struggled to focus, her notes deteriorating into meaningless scribbles, while her mind replayed the synchronized arrival of those 7 armed men. The lecture hall, usually a place of academic refuge, now felt like a tactical nightmare. Every time the heavy door creaked open for a late student, Dana's head snapped up, her pulse spiking into tachycardia. She found herself counting exits, assessing the thickness of the desks for cover, analyzing the sightlines from the podium to the back row. She wasn't acting like a student anymore. She was thinking like a target. The disconnect between the sterile medical theory of scene safety written on the whiteboard and the messy, violent reality she had brushed against was disorienting. She realized with a sinking feeling that she couldn't unsee the geometry of violence. It was superimposed over everything. Now the cafeteria line, the lecture hall, the crowded red line car on her commute home. 2 days crawled past in a fog of paranoia. Dana found herself flinching at unexpected sounds, sleeping in fragmented bursts, and checking and rechecking the locks on their apartment door. Her 17-year-old brother deserved better than half-truths. Isaiah was a senior at Englewood High, maintaining a 3.8 gigapascals through sheer determination, already accepted to 3 state schools before the Northwestern letter arrived. He asked about the dark circles under her eyes, but she deflected with excuses about upcoming exams and clinical rotation stress. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Enzo's dark gaze meeting hers across that leather billfold, felt the brush of his fingers, heard the crash of wood against marble. The phone call came on Saturday morning. Dana was elbow-deep in pharmacology flashcards, her 3rd coffee of the day, going cold beside her textbook, when her cell buzzed with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something instinct, curiosity, or perhaps the resignation of fate, made her thumb the green icon. Miss Brown. The voice was smooth, cultured, unmistakably his. I trust you've recovered from Thursday's excitement. Her hand tightened around the phone until her knuckles turned white. Mr. Baresi. It wasn't a question. Who else would have her number, her full name, and this particular brand of casual menace wrapped in courtesy? I wonder if you might join me for coffee this afternoon. There are matters we should discuss regarding your future. The phrasing suggested a request, but the underlying steel made clear it was nothing of the sort. 3 o'clock. The Arabica, on Clark Street. Come alone. The line went dead before she could respond. Dana stared at her phone, pulse hammering in her throat. Every survival instinct screamed at her to ignore the summons, to pack a bag, grab Isaiah, and disappear into the vast anonymity of America's heartland. But she knew with bone-deep certainty that running was pointless. Enzo Baresi didn't make requests he couldn't enforce. Dana arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, scanning for threats with a new, fearful intensity. The Arabica occupied a corner storefront, floor-to-ceiling windows offering clear sightlines to the street. Inside, exposed brick and reclaimed wood created an atmosphere of manufactured authenticity. A handful of customers hunched over laptops, headphones blocking out the world. None looked like professional killers, but Dana had learned on Thursday that appearances meant nothing. The men in the suits at the Bellecourt had looked like bankers until they reached for their waistbands. Enzo arrived precisely at 3, flanked by 2 men whose expensive suits couldn't quite disguise their function. Bodyguards, she realized, noting the telltale bulges and the way they positioned themselves with tactical precision, one facing the door, one scanning the street. Enzo wore charcoal gray today, no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone in a gesture that somehow made him seem more dangerous rather than less. Without the formal armor of his Thursday attire, he looked younger, more human, which unsettled her more than his usual predatory elegance. He dismissed his security with a subtle hand gesture, then slid into the chair across from her with fluid grace. Up close, she noticed details the dim lighting of Bellecourt had obscured: the faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the gray threading through his dark beard, the weariness in his eyes that no amount of control could fully mask. You saved my life Thursday night, he said without preamble. No gratitude colored his tone, just a statement of fact. The Taviano family paid $2 million for that contract, 7 of their best people. You noticed what my own security missed, until it was nearly too late. Dana forced her hands to remain steady around her untouched latte. I just brought you your bill, Mr. Baresi. What happened after that is none of my concern. His smile held no warmth. If only that were true, Miss Brown. If only that were true. Enzo signaled the barista, who appeared instantly with an espresso Dana hadn't seen him order. 3 years you've served my table, Enzo continued, adding a single sugar cube to his espresso. Never a mistake, never a question, never a glance that lingered too long. That level of professional discretion is rare, valuable. I was raised to mind my own business, Dana replied, keeping her voice steady despite the anxiety clawing at her chest. My mama taught me that survival means knowing when to see and when to look away. Wise woman, your mother. Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of respect. Tell me about her. She worked 3 jobs to keep us housed. Died of complications from diabetes she couldn't afford to manage properly. The words came out harder than she intended. I'm studying nursing so that what happened to her doesn't happen to others. Enzo studied her with unsettling intensity. Noble ambition, but you're connected to my world now, whether you wish to be or not. He pulled a manila envelope from inside his jacket, sliding it across the table. The Taviano family has identified you. They hacked the Bellacourt's cloud server, likely with the help of a manager I've since relieved of duty. They have the internal footage. Dana felt the blood drain from her face. Footage. They captured everything. Your hand circling the date, scrawling trap. Our fingers touching. They've analyzed it. They believe you're an operative who ruined their hit. That makes you a liability. I just wrote on a receipt. I'm nobody. To them, you picked a side. He tapped the envelope. Inside are photos of the men who came for me. But more importantly, there is a platinum bracelet in your apartment, delivered yesterday. It has an emergency beacon. Press it for 3 seconds, and my team responds in 90. You are under my protection now, Miss Brown. Because the Tavianos do not leave loose ends. The avalanche of influence began on Monday morning. First, the Bellacourt called permanent closure, severance pay for 2 weeks, and a recommendation letter that praised her service while carefully omitting why the establishment no longer existed. The manager's voice on that call had been carefully neutral, professionally distant. The severance includes a confidentiality agreement regarding all club operations and clientele. Sign it, Miss Brown, for your own protection. An hour later, the nursing school bursar's office called. Dana had prepared herself to beg for an extension on her payments. Instead, the woman on the line told her that her remaining tuition, nearly $30,000, had been paid in full by an anonymous alumnus establishing a merit scholarship for students from underserved communities. The financial aid officer gushed about her good fortune, but Dana felt sick. The final blow came when Isaiah arrived home from school that afternoon. He was whooping with joy, waving a thick envelope. Northwestern, full ride, day, tuition, housing, books, everything. He danced around their cramped apartment, already planning his future as a mechanical engineer. Watching his pure, uncomplicated happiness had broken something in Dana's chest. How could she tell him that his dreams were being funded by blood money, that the life raft saving them from drowning in debt came with a cost she was only beginning to understand? Enzo Baresi was systematically removing every worry from her life, leaving her with nothing but gratitude and obligation. That night, Dana stared at the platinum bracelet on her dresser. It felt heavier than its few ounces should allow. She picked it up, the metal cool against her skin, and looked at the engraved initials, D.B. He had marked her, he had bought her future, and secured her brother's dreams. Denying his protection now wasn't defiance, it was stupidity. With a trembling hand, she clasped the bracelet around her wrist. The click of the lock sounded like a prison door closing, or perhaps a fortress gate bolting shut. She wasn't sure which yet. The new maintenance man at their building appeared the next morning, young, fit, with eyes that tracked movement with professional assessment, and a toolbox that seemed too light for legitimate repair work. He'd introduced himself as Jerome, mentioned he'd be doing regular maintenance checks, and proceeded to test every lock, window, and exit point in their unit. When Dana had questioned the sudden attention to building security, he'd simply smiled and said the management company was implementing new protocols. She wasn't fooled. Enzo's protection had nested around her like a spider's web, beautiful, intricate, and inescapable. Her nursing ethics class that week focused on mandatory reporting requirements. The professor, a stern woman with 30 years of ER experience, emphasized the moral imperative to report suspected criminal activity, to serve as advocates for public health and safety. Every word felt like an indictment. Dana sat rigid in her seat, fingers unconsciously touching the platinum bracelet under her sleeve, wondering if her classmates could sense the hypocrisy radiating from her skin. Police tape appeared at a Southside warehouse 4 days after the incident, the bodies discovered by sanitation workers. The news reported it as gang violence, territory disputes between rival organizations, but Dana recognized the message in the photographs that somehow appeared in her employee locker at the hospital. The 4 men who'd escaped from the Bellacourt incident were all dead, all within 72 hours. Enzo Baresi was cleaning up loose ends with efficient brutality. Detective Harriet Brennan appeared at her apartment door on Wednesday evening, badge held casually but unmistakably. The detective was black, mid-40s, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Brown, I'm investigating the incident at the Bellacourt Club last Thursday." She didn't wait for an invitation, simply stepped inside when Dana reflexively moved back. Interesting how you're the only witness with perfect recall of that evening. Everyone else seems to have suffered simultaneous amnesia. I notice details, Dana replied, channeling the professional detachment that had served her well at the club. It's how I earn my way through nursing school. Nursing school that suddenly paid in full? Brennan's smile was sharp. Along with your brother's college tuition? That's quite a coincidence. Anonymous scholarship, Dana said, the lie forming more easily than it should. I'm sure it is. Brennan handed her a card. Let me be clear. Enzo Baresi doesn't invest in people without expecting returns. Whatever he's offered you, whatever protection you think he's providing, it comes with a price. When you need help extracting yourself from his world, call me. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I can promise it's possible. The weeks between February and March passed in a blur of snow and tension. Enzo began appearing at the Northwestern Hospital cafeteria, where Dana worked her morning shifts. It was always Tuesday mornings now, a deliberate new ritual to replace the Thursday dinners at Bellacorta. He was never demanding, always present, rebuilding routine after chaos, not every week, but often enough to establish a pattern. He'd sit in her section, order coffee he'd barely touch, and read the Tribune with the focused attention of a man for whom information was currency. The other staff learned quickly not to approach his table. Some instinct, primal and undeniable, warned them away from the well-dressed man who radiated danger beneath his veneer of civility. Their conversations developed gradually, cautiously, like animals circling each other in careful assessment. He never discussed his business directly, and she never asked. Instead, they talked around the edges, her studies, his views on healthcare policy, the city's neighborhoods, and the persistent inequities that created worlds within worlds. What made you choose nursing? He asked one morning in early March, genuine curiosity coloring his tone as he folded his newspaper. The question touched the rawest part of her. My mama died because we couldn't afford the care that could have saved her. Diabetes complications, kidney failure, infections that could have been prevented with proper management. Her hands tightened around the coffee pot. I won't let that happen to others. I can't. Enzo studied her with that unsettling intensity she'd come to recognize. Noble, though nobility often costs more than pragmatism in the long run. Some things are worth the cost, she countered. Perhaps. He stirred his coffee once, twice, 3 times clockwise. Though I wonder if you've calculated the full price of your principles. Principals don't pay rent, Miss Brown. They don't feed younger brothers or fund medical degrees. They let you sleep at night. His smile was sad, knowing, you'd be surprised what you can grow accustomed to, given enough time and necessity. The conversation haunted her through her morning classes, through afternoon clinicals where she practiced inserting IVs into practice arms and memorized dosage calculations. She was learning to save lives in sterile classrooms while being drawn into a world that dealt in death. The irony was so sharp it drew blood. Isaiah had started noticing the changes, the paid-off tuition, the new maintenance man, the sedan that seemed to appear whenever Dana walked home late. Her brother was smart, observant traits she'd cultivated in him as survival skills. Now those same traits threatened to expose truths she wasn't ready to explain. Day. What's going on? He asked one evening, cornering her in their narrow kitchen. Don't tell me it's nothing. The scholarship, the building suddenly caring about security. That guy who's always parked across the street, something's happening. She wanted to lie, to protect him with comfortable fiction, but Isaiah deserved better. I did something at work, helped someone I probably shouldn't have helped. Now that person feels obligated to return the favor. What kind of person? The dangerous kind. Isaiah's expression hardened with premature understanding. Their neighborhood had taught them both to recognize power's various faces. Can we get out of it? I don't know. The honesty felt like failure. But whatever happens, you're going to Northwestern. You're getting out, getting your degree, building the life Mama wanted for you. Not if it costs you everything, Day. We're family. We face things together. She pulled him into a fierce hug, this boy becoming man who carried their mother's determination and their father's gentle heart. She held him tight, knowing that Enzo was right. She would pay any price for this boy, even if the currency was her own soul. Finals week descended in mid-March like a storm, demanding every ounce of Dana's focus. Pharmacology, pathophysiology, health assessment, the exams came in relentless succession. She buried herself in flashcards and practice questions, grateful for the distraction, for problems that had correct answers and clear solutions. Her world had narrowed to lecture halls and study lounges, to coffee-fueled midnight review sessions and the clinical precision of multiple-choice questions. It was a safe world, a predictable one. The illusion shattered when she arrived home to find Isaiah pale and shaking, 2 uniformed police officers in their living room. Her brother stood near the window, arms wrapped around himself, looking younger than his 17 years. "Isaiah?" She dropped her bag, crossing to him in 3 quick steps. "What happened?" "2 men followed me home from school." His voice shook despite obvious efforts to control it. "They didn't try to hide it, Day. They wanted me to know they were there. Had Teviano colors on their jackets, those blue and gold pins everyone on the south side recognizes." One of the officers, a tired-looking veteran, stepped forward. "Your brother did the right thing calling us." We escorted him inside, checked the building. The men dispersed when they saw our squad car. "They're still out there, though," Dana said, her stomach twisting. She moved to the window, peering through the blinds. Down on the street corner, she caught a glimpse of a dark sedan idling. A young man in a blue and gold jacket leaned against the passenger door, glaring up at their unit with brazen arrogance. He had a shaved head and a distinctive black diamond tattoo on his neck, marking him as something more than just a street soldier. He looked like a kid trying to prove something. A dangerous kid. He met her gaze for a split second before slipping into the car as it pulled away. Dana stepped back, heart pounding. This was a message, a demonstration of reach and intent. The Tavianos weren't just watching anymore. They were hunting. After the officers left with promises to increase patrols that everyone knew were meaningless, Dana's hand went to the bracelet. She could press the emergency beacon 90-second response time, but that felt like total capitulation. Instead, she made the call she'd been avoiding. Enzo answered on the first ring. "My brother was followed home today. Taviano colors." She didn't bother with pleasantries. "You said your protection extended to family." "It does. I've already dispatched additional security to your building." His voice remained calm, but she detected an undercurrent of cold anger. "I need you to come to me tonight, Miss Brown. We have much to discuss, and it can't wait." The car arrived 30 minutes later, a black sedan with tinted windows. Dana kissed Isaiah's forehead, made him promise to keep the doors locked, then descended into the vehicle. The ride to the Gold Coast was silent, the city lights blurring past like streaks of fire. Enzo's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower. The elevator required both keycard and biometric scan. When the doors opened directly into his residence, Dana stepped into a space that redefined her understanding of wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Chicago sprawling to the horizon. Enzo stood at the windows, hands in his pockets. "The Tavianos have escalated," he said to her reflection in the glass. "They've put a price on your head. $500,000. Enough to interest every desperate criminal in Chicago." He finally turned, his expression grave. "They've concluded you're directly responsible for their failure. They don't forgive that kind of loss." Dana's legs went weak. "What does that mean for Isaiah?" "For me, it means the illusion of distance is over. You dragged us into this," she accused, fear turning to anger. "I am the only thing keeping you above water," he countered. "The Tavianos don't care about your nursing degree. They care about face, and right now, you are a blemish on their reputation." He gestured to the sprawling city below. "You have 2 choices. You can trust the police, who will file reports while you and your brother are hunted. Or you can accept that you are in my world now." "I never asked for your world." "No," he agreed softly, stepping closer. "But you stepped into it the moment you put ink to paper. You saved a life, Dana. The universe demands balance. Now, you must let me save yours." Enzo gestured to a leather sofa positioned to maximize the view. Dana sat, her nursing training providing an automatic inventory of the space exits, sight lines, potential weapons. The habits of hypervigilance that had kept her safe growing up had new applications here. He poured whiskey from a crystal decanter, offered her a glass. When she shook her head, he set both glasses aside and sat across from her. "I need to be clear about your situation," he began, his voice stripped of its usual urbane pleasantness. "The Taviano family has assigned this contract to a specialist, a woman named Caterina Volpe who's never failed a target." The clinical part of Dana's brain noted her elevated heart rate, the cold spreading through her extremities. The human part simply felt terror. "Can't you negotiate with them? Explain I'm not part of your organization? That makes it worse. It means I have operational security problems they can exploit. It means I'm vulnerable through civilians." He paused. "It also means you're innocent collateral damage, which paradoxically makes the vendetta more necessary for them. They need to demonstrate that interfering with their business carries consequences. So what are you proposing?" "Integration. You become part of my organization officially. Isaiah receives around-the-clock security and upgraded housing. You continue nursing school under my support, but you also provide medical consultation services to my enterprises. You want me to be the Mafia's personal nurse? She couldn't keep the bitterness from her tone. I want you to provide health care to people the system has abandoned. His correction was sharp. Many in my employ are undocumented or have criminal records that prevent insurance coverage. They work dangerous jobs. Currently, they suffer or die because accessing healthcare means exposure to authorities. You're describing a legitimate need funded by illegitimate means. I'm describing reality, Miss Brown. The world isn't divided cleanly into legal and illegal. It's people in pain who need help. Before Dana could respond, a knock interrupted Victor Reese. Enzo's head of security entered with the professional calm that signaled trouble. Sir, we have movement. Multiple vehicles approaching from 3 directions. Taviano colors. 9 confirmed hostiles. ETA 3 minutes. Enzo was on his feet instantly. Activate lockdown protocols. Get Miss Brown to the panic room. I'm not hiding while people die, Dana said, standing. I'm a trauma nurse. Where's your medical kit? Enzo weighed her usefulness against her vulnerability. Can you handle arterial bleeding? I can handle anything short of surgery. Where's your kit? He made his decision. Northeast corner. Medical station behind the abstract painting. Everything you need is already there. Victor. Arm her with Kevlar. As the security team scattered, Dana was fitted with a vest that felt absurdly heavy. Through the windows, she could see vehicles taking positions on the street below. They're setting up a breach, Victor said, checking a monitor. Looks like they're going for the main doors and the garage. Dana looked at the screen, at the architectural layout of the penthouse. No, she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. They aren't. Enzo looked at her. Explain. Not tactics, she said quickly, pointing to the atrium. Physics. Look at your defensive positions. You have 4 men clustered behind that marble pillar near the atrium glass. If they breach that window with explosives, the glass becomes shrapnel. She pointed at the massive pane. That isn't a window. It's a fragmentation grenade waiting to go off. I can't triage 4 men simultaneously with massive lacerations. You need to move them. Enzo stared at the screen, seeing the brutal logic of the glass she described. She's right. The spray pattern would be lethal. He keyed his mic. Victor, shift Team Alpha. Clear the atrium radius. Assume glass breach. Spread out to minimize casualty clusters. Victor relayed the order. Men moved. Seconds before a dull thump echoed from the street. Why are you doing this? Enzo asked quietly, checking his weapon. You could have stayed in the panic room. Because I circled that number, Dana answered. Because my choices created this situation. The first explosion cut off whatever he might have said next. The atrium window erupted inward, reinforced glass disintegrating into millions of razor-sharp fragments that scythed through the empty space where the guards had been standing moments before. The medical station revealed Enzo's preparation trauma supplies that would stock a small ER, organized with military precision. Dana's hands moved automatically, checking inventory, tearing open packages of clotting gauze, setting up triage zones. Somewhere in the back of her mind, her nursing professor's voices provided clinical protocols, but the reality was far messier. Enzo appeared beside her, now wearing body armor over his dress shirt. He handed her a communications earpiece. Channel 3 for direct communication with me. If I give an order, you follow it immediately. No hesitation. I understand battlefield medicine, Dana replied, fitting the earpiece. First rule is keep yourself alive so you can keep others alive. Good. He turned to Victor. Status? Perimeter locked down. Blast shutters deploying on the north side, but the atrium breach is open. They're grappling up. Dana watched the monitors. The attackers were moving with frightening speed, rappelling into the shattered atrium. Because of her warning, Enzo's men were positioned behind hard cover further back, uninjured by the initial glass storm. They opened fire, catching the Tavianos in a crossfire. Suppressing fire! Victor shouted over the comms. Hold the corridor! Dana pressed herself against the medical station's protective wall, heart hammering. A security guard stumbled backward through the smoke, clutching his shoulder, blood streaming between his fingers. She grabbed him, pulling him into cover, her training overriding terror. Sit. Don't move. Her hands moved automatically, cutting away his jacket, through and through bullet wound. Missed the bone, but the bleeding was arterial. She packed the wound with gauze, applied pressure. You're going to be fine. Keep pressure here. 2 more wounded staggered back from the firing line. Dana moved between them, assessing, prioritizing. A leg wound tourniquet above the knee. Facial laceration from stray glass pressure dressing. The clinical language provided distance from the reality that these were human beings bleeding out on Italian marble. Dana. Enzo's voice crackled in her ear, sharp with urgency. I need you to call Detective Brennan. Now. She fumbled for her phone in the tactical vest's inner pocket, her blood-slick fingers struggling with the screen. She dialed the number Brennan had given her. Brennan. There's an assault happening at. She rattled off the address. Multiple armed attackers, civilians trapped, people are bleeding, we need help. I'm dispatching tactical response, Brennan said, her voice tight. Stay on the line. I can't. Dana hung up as another explosion shook the floor, the comms filled with screams and orders. Through the smoke, she saw Enzo. He moved with terrifying economy, firing, moving, commanding. He wasn't the man from the coffee shop, he was the wolf. She watched him take a blow to the face from a rifle stock, blood immediately streaming from his brow. But he didn't slow. More wounded kept coming. Tommy Vasquez, the youngest member of the security detail, barely 21, stumbled back, clutching his chest with desperate hands. Dana caught him as he fell, sliding in the blood on the floor. Tommy, look at me. She laid him down. Pink froth bubbled at his lips. Sucking chest wound. I've got you. She ripped open a chest seal package. Breathe. She slapped the seal over the hole in his chest. Stay with me. Tommy. They're falling back, Victor reported, his voice strained. Police sirens inbound. They're aborting. The gunfire stopped as abruptly as it had begun, replaced by the groans of the wounded and the distant wail of sirens. Dana stood, wiping sweat and blood from her eyes. She counted heads. 8 wounded, no dead. Not yet. Then she saw Enzo. He was kneeling near the shattered window, one hand pressed against his side. Dark blood was spreading across his white shirt, blooming like a terrible flower. He tried to stand and stumbled, his legendary control finally slipping as shock set in. The silence after the firefight was heavier than the noise. Dana rushed across the room, skidding to her knees beside Enzo. The adrenaline that had fueled her triage was shifting now, curdling into cold fear. Let me see, she ordered, her voice brooking no argument. Enzo grimaced, his skin pale beneath the blood and soot. I'm fine. Check the others. I checked them. Tommy is stable. You're bleeding out. She pulled his hand away. The bullet had caught him in the left flank, tearing through the muscle just above the hip bone. Dana probed the wound quickly, her mind racing. It was deep, nasty, and bleeding profusely, but it hadn't punched into the abdominal cavity. It's a deep laceration to the oblique, she diagnosed, her voice steady. It missed the gut. You're lucky. 2 inches inward and I'd be watching you die. Lucky seems insufficient, he gasped, wincing as she packed the wound with hemostatic gauze. This is twice you've saved my life, Miss Brown. Stop talking. Save your energy. She wrapped the dressing tight, securing it with tape. Her hands were steady, but her heart felt like it was vibrating out of her chest. You need stitches and antibiotics. But you aren't going to bleed to death in the next 10 minutes. The police are breaching the lobby, Victor announced, limping over. He had a tourniquet on his left arm, applied by Dana 10 minutes ago. The Tavianos are gone. We found Caterina Volpe near the atrium. Enzo looked up, eyes sharp despite the pain. And dead, Victor confirmed grimly. Caught in the crossfire when they tried to breach the window. Miss Brown's warning about the glass. It flushed them right into our kill zone. Dana felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. She hadn't just saved Enzo's men. She had actively facilitated the death of their enemies. Leave the medical supplies, Dana said, standing up and wiping her hands on her pants, pushing the thought away. It looks like a war zone because it is one. Don't try to hide the blood. The paramedics burst through the door minutes later, escorted by a SWAT team that cleared the room with weapons drawn. Dana switched modes instantly, stepping into the role of charge nurse. She barked handoff reports to the incoming medics. Male, 21, tension pneumothorax, chest seal applied, vitals stable but shallow. He needs a chest tube now. She pointed to Tommy. Male, 40, gunshot wound to the thigh, tourniquet, time 21:15. Male, 38, abdominal graze, stable. The lead paramedic looked at her, at the vest she wore, the blood on her arms, and the command in her voice. He didn't question her. He just nodded and directed his team. Enzo was loaded onto a stretcher, protesting weakly. I don't need a hospital. You need debridement and imaging to ensure no internal bleeding, Dana snapped, walking beside the stretcher. You're going, and I'm coming with you. As they wheeled him toward the elevator, he reached out, gripping her wrist. His hand was cold, but his grip was iron. You stayed. I told you, she said, her voice softening just a fraction. I don't leave patients. This changes things, he murmured as the morphine the paramedics administered began to take hold. The debt is complicated. Dana watched the elevator doors close. She was left standing in the ruins of the penthouse, surrounded by police officers who were now looking at her with suspicion rather than concern. Detective Brennan stepped through the crowd, stepping over shattered glass. She took in the scene, the medical station, the blood, Dana's tactical vest. I see you didn't take my advice, Brennan said, her voice flat. I called you. Dana countered, feeling the exhaustion hit her like a physical weight. I did exactly what you said. You called me to save him, Brennan corrected. And now you're standing in a crime scene wearing body armor, giving orders like a veteran. She shook her head. You're in deep, Dana. The Tavianos failed tonight, which means they'll be desperate. And Enzo, he's not going to let you go after this. You're not just a witness anymore. You're an asset. Dana looked at her bloody hands. She thought of Tommy breathing because of the seal she applied. She thought of Enzo's men moving away from the window because she understood the physics of glass. I saved lives tonight, Detective, Dana said quietly. I can live with that. Can you? Brennan handed her a wipe. Clean yourself up. We have a long night of statements ahead of us. And Dana? Don't sign anything until you read it twice. The hospital treatment lasted hours. Dana insisted on accompanying the wounded, using her student credentials and sheer stubbornness to maintain access. She watched surgeons repair what her field medicine had stabilized, saw Tommy pulled back from the edge of death, and observed Enzo being stitched and scanned. Dawn broke over Chicago as they finally emerged. Dana stood on the hospital steps, blood dried on her clothes, exhaustion making the city look gray and washed out. A black SUV idled at the curb. The window rolled down to reveal Enzo sitting in the back seat. He had signed himself out against medical advice, refusing admission once the imaging confirmed the bullet hadn't pierced the peritoneum. He wore fresh clothes delivered by an associate, but he was slumped against the leather seat, leaning slightly away from the door to protect his sutured side. His face was pale and drawn. He didn't have the strength to stand, but his eyes were alert. Get in, he rasped, his voice barely audible over the morning traffic. Dana hesitated, then slid into the seat opposite him. You should be in a bed. I have a proposal, he said, ignoring her medical advice. A legitimate medical clinic. We'll put it in the buffer zone on 47th neutral ground between the territories. Fully licensed, properly equipped. You run it. You make all medical decisions. You provide care to anyone who needs it, my people. Yes, but also the neighborhood. Anyone who walks through the door. The offer landed like a physical blow. It was everything she had told him. She wanted the ability to provide care to people the system abandoned, but it came wrapped in moral complexity so thick she couldn't see the bottom. Funded by your organization, she said. Funded by me, he corrected, wincing as the car shifted. You want to save lives. I have people who need saving and cannot go to hospitals. And the community, they need help too. You can give it to them. I will provide the shell. You provide the soul. And what do you get? I get a healthy workforce. And I get you safe, in a controlled environment, doing what you were born to do. He met her eyes, glassy with medication but sharp with intent. I need a healer, not a soldier, Miss Brown. Isaiah's safety, her nursing degree, the clinic. Her dreams realized through compromise with the devil. The calculation was brutal. I make all medical decisions, she said. No compromise on patient care. If a Taviano walks in bleeding, I treat them. Enzo's eyes narrowed slightly, then softened. If a Taviano walks in bleeding, it means we won. Agreed. 6 months later, the clinic opened. It was a nondescript brick building on 47th Street, strategically placed on the invisible line dividing the warring factions. Inside, it was state-of-the-art. Dana treated gunshot wounds without asking how they happened, delivered babies for women without papers, and provided insulin to diabetics who had been rationing their doses. Her dream, realized. Her principles, compromised. Isaiah started at Northwestern that fall, protected but informed. He knew where the money came from now. He didn't like it, but he understood the math of their survival. On the clinic's opening day, the bell above the door chimed. Dana looked up from a chart to see a young man stumbling in, clutching his arm. He was pale, sweating, and terrified. She recognized the jacket immediately, the blue and gold pin on the lapel. Taviano colors. It was the same young man who had followed Isaiah home 6 months ago. The turf war had obviously continued, and this boy had been on the losing end of a skirmish nearby. He had likely avoided the ER for fear of police, stumbling into the only open door in the neutral zone. He froze when he saw her. He knew who she was. He knew whose territory bordered this street. And she recognized him, the same black diamond tattoo on his neck she had seen from her window that day. He turned to leave, terrified that he had walked into a trap. "Wait," Dana called out. Her voice was steady, authoritative, the voice of a nurse, not a victim. He stopped, hand on the doorknob, blood dripping onto the floor. I didn't know this was Baresi's place." "It's my place," Dana said. She walked around the counter, snapping on a pair of blue nitrile gloves. She didn't see an enemy. She saw a laceration that needed sutures and a human being in shock. "Room 2, she ordered gently. "Let's get that looked at." The boy hesitated, then slumped, the fight draining out of him. He let her lead him to the exam room. As she began to clean the wound, Dana realized that Enzo had been right about one thing. The world wasn't divided into clean and dirty. It was a messy, gray sprawl of need and survival. She had circled a number on a bill to save a life, and that single act had rippled outward, creating this sanctuary born of violence. She was Dana Brown. She was a healer in the lion's den. And as she stitched the wound of the enemy, she knew she had made the only choice she could live with. "Deep breath," she told the boy. "This is going to sting, but you're going to be okay." If you've made it to the end and haven't subscribed yet, this is the perfect time to become part of this family. Also, do tell me in the comments what struck you most about the story. What was the greatest lesson it left you? I try to read all the comments, and I love knowing how these stories move you. Finally, I just want to say, thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed it, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazy and even more intriguing than you can ever imagine. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.